Danielle Smith with Alberta Enterprise Group, collaborating with Common Sense Calgary to interview candidates for the upcoming civic election in Calgary on October the 18th. And joining me now is Tony Dinh. He is your candidate for Ward 10. Tony, thanks so much for being with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Danielle Smith, and I'm super looking forward to this conversation.
I'm looking forward to it too. So tell me a little bit about yourself and why you think you'd make a good council member.
Yeah, you bet. So, I was born and raised in Northeast in Ward 10. And so what I believe that what would make me a really good city councilor is I have a lot of experience. I have a very legitimate resume. And so, being born and raised, I understand the communities. I understand the minorities that have grown up in the communities, the struggles and the challenges. My family, we came here from a war-torn country, Vietnam. Mm-hmm. And so my parents, I was raised with the sentiment that they came here so that we can have a future. Mm-hmm. And so my parents had come here with 3 children, and they had me because they were afraid that maybe one day that they would get sent back. And so having me being born a Canadian, I would be able to potentially bring them back if they ever got sent away from Calgary. And so, bringing, my vast experience as a builder, I understand the land use and the engagement of what's needed with planning and community development.
What kind of building do you do? Are you a home builder or industrial or commercial building?
No, so I'm a residential builder, and we focus on affordable housing.
Oh, excellent. Give me some idea of the when you have to work with city administration. Are you finding that it's easy to do, or do you think that there's some processes that need to be streamlined?
Yeah, so I mean, they do have really clear processes. For example, rezoning. They want you to engage the community. They want you to engage your neighbors, get input from the community associations, and then follow certain guidelines. So, the MDP and the ARPs. And so, our city, they want to densify. And so the process, it does take some time, but they really want you to engage as our city is growing very quickly and developing in the inner city. It really takes, making sure that all the stakeholders are engaged, and then they get the, input so that, how they can be impacted. And then, does this project fit in the communities that you're proposing to build in?
Okay, well, we'll talk a bit more about affordable housing, but give me an idea of what you're hearing from constituents. What are the 3 top issues in Ward 10?
So, for Ward 10, a lot of the concerns I've heard is that they're not exactly convinced on, where the money is getting spent. So a lot of the money is getting spent elsewhere. And so, they're finding that a lot of their taxes are rising. They're experiencing, the security. So they want to make sure that our streets are safe, and also that just basic needs that are required for our community. So snowplow, potholes, and they want to see some investment back in our communities because I have it that we're the working class. So we pay our bills, we pay our taxes, but we're not getting investment in our communities. And so they just really want to, what we have right now, we have, good green spaces, but it would be nice to have some enhanced. So, more benches, some shelters, so like a gazebo or some sort. Some of the parks that we have before some of the most popular sports was soccer, but now some of it is becoming cricket pitches. And so it's just really, utilizing what we have now and something that really reflects with the people that live there currently.
Well, let me talk to you a bit about the spending side of things, because I'm wondering if you think that that's an allocation decision or an allocation problem, or if you want to see an increase in overall spending. So talk to me sort of from a global point of view on the budget. Do you think that city council is spending too much, too little, about right, or just spending in the wrong places?
Yeah, so good question. So I believe that's a spending problem. We have a certain amount of revenue, and the spending has we can see it in the property taxes and the business taxes. So I would definitely say it's a spending problem. and we need to get our checks in order and get that handled, because what they say is the property taxes are increasing with no sign of slowing down. And so we really want to get the spending under control, so that people can, get it managed, especially in, these COVID or coming out of this crisis.
Okay, let's talk about the other side of it, which is on the taxes. What are you hearing people say about the level of taxes? Because we've had sort of two levels where it has had to be redistributed because of the collapse in downtown Calgary office tower prices that distributed all of that tax or that tax need onto the small businesses in the outlying communities. And when that became too much of a burden, it ended up getting spread further and shifted onto residents. What are you hearing about that? What would you do about it?
Yeah, you bet. So, the property taxes, they are increasing. And a lot of the people, I think they just feel that they haven't been engaged and that they didn't really get discussed with. And so they kind of feel that it's been a little bit blindsided. And so I think with, just being able to, talk to the people and actually kind of have them understand that, the property tax, yes, they are increasing, but they are still relatively low compared to other major cities, and we are just catching up to the other cities. So we did have a very affordable environment. Our property taxes were very low. We lived in a very affordable city with affordability, and we do make the most weekly on a salary, and we have less taxes. So we do live in a very affordable city, and in Northeast it's probably the most affordable and probably the best value for where you want to live, especially with the hospital and LRT and malls and all those so much amenities in Ward 10.
So I'm hearing you say taxes are probably fair. What about on businesses?
So I don't think it's that fair for businesses. The city spent a lot of money, and then really the businesses took the brunt of it, and I don't think that's really fair, because they're financing a lot of the spending, and they took a lot, and they kind of took it on the chin there, and you see it on their signs, like double, triple, quadruple taxes. And so for one, our downtown was overbuilt, and they were expecting certain revenue from the office spaces, and it's just it's just unfortunate that there's just so much spending, and that it had to go to the businesses that are really the backbone of our economy.
Well, let's then talk about a couple of things. First of all, what would you do to address the vacancy in the downtown?
So, there's so much space, thousands, like 100, I think 140,000 square feet or so. And so I think it would take a mixed approach, a little bit of the private and the public sector. I do like the idea of, institutional, if we could somehow bring some, sort of tech, institutional and tech businesses that could start taking up some of the space in, with the vacancies. I know some of them can be converted to housing, not all of them, and only a certain amount, but it is possible, and some of them can be turned into hotels. But it's an interesting issue, and it's going to take some time to deal with. So probably incentives of some sort.
So let's talk about the kind of incentives you'd be open to. I mean, you can give tax breaks or tax holidays, you can reduce red tape and regulation, or you could give direct subsidies, like through the Calgary Economic Development. They were given $100 million to use for business attraction. What approach do you favor?
Yeah, so I do like that we are, I have to say, thinking outside the box. So, using the the 100 million for the economic development. So if we look at, what has happened since, this economic development. So we have a growing tech industry, and we have a growing film industry. And so this growing tech, people are choosing to move to Calgary, headquarters for, the tech industry. And so promoting our city, would be, a good way of, filling up the vacancies. It's like you could have the best product, but if nobody knows about it, then it's irrelevant. And so Calgary is the most livable city in North America, and we do need to attract these talent and headquarters and really have them in Calgary, because Calgary has so much to offer.
All right. Let me switch gears a little bit and just talk a bit more about the operating side of the budget, because one of the things that you face is that one of the biggest ticket items in the operating budget is salaries. And so I want to ask you sort of a three-layered question about how you would approach it, because the private sector has seen wage rollbacks and wage austerity and cuts, but we haven't really seen that on the public sector side. Often you see multi-year contracts that are negotiated and workers move up the pay grid with more and more seniority. Do you think that there needs to be anything to address the cost of wages at the city for frontline workers?
Oh, for sure. I think it almost seems like, working for the city is like almost winning the lottery. Like you got, it's just increasing so much. And so I think that the salaries need to freeze so that it's more in line with the private sector here. And so if we could get that under control, because I believe half of the revenue goes to salaries. It's like $2 billion that are going to the salaries. And, like the salaries are pretty high already. And then you got benefits and then you got pensions. Mm-hmm. And so I would propose to freeze all of that and really start to work lean, because like you said, the private sector has taken, they've gone lean, and they're not getting the raises, especially in this environment. So Calgary needs to reflect that also, being responsible and managing our expenses so that it doesn't get pushed onto the businesses or the residential taxes.
What about council salaries? Do you think that as an elected council member you're paid fairly, or do you think you should take a cut?
So I think it's fair, the pay as an elected official. For me, I get paid more in the private sector, but I think with goodwill, a pay cut would be appropriate. Nothing like crazy, 5%, but in goodwill to build trust with the people, with people, and be like, and so that they understand, we're in this together with you. And that we understand that you've taken a pay cut. And so in a way, it's being able to relate with them and really start to build that trust again, because they think that, we're out of tune. And so it's in goodwill and, for a couple of years until Calgary gets back on track, so that, we really can, speak to the people, and then we can allow, that trust to happen again.
What about management? Do you think that there needs to be an approach to dealing with the layers of management?
Yeah. So from what I understand, there's a lot of management, there's a lot of staff, there's a lot of different departments, and so I think Calgary needs to lean out, or at least freeze the hiring and become more efficient and really run like a business. It essentially is more or less a business. So less hiring and let's manage that.
Okay. Let me ask you a bit about infrastructure. Sounds like this is where your area of expertise would be. So first, let me just talk about a couple of the big ticket items and get your take on it. So first of all, the Calgary Green Line LRT, it was supposed to be 40 kilometers. It had three-way funding. It was supposed to be less than $5 billion. Now it's same cost, but half the project, and it doesn't go to the deep south or the deep north. Do you think that project should still go ahead as it was originally devised, or do you think it should be scrapped altogether, or do you think it can be modified in some way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question. And so I believe that, the Green Line should move forward. We do have the funding from, all levels of government. I'm a big proponent of the Green Line. I believe in the Green Line. So I had owned the Chinese laundry building, as the general public knows. It was in Ogden. And so I actually sold it to the city so that we can get out of the way for the Green Line to proceed. And so, with that Green Line, it would be a long-term equitable investment for Calgary. And we need to have those investments. So, and what that does is it allows our south to connect to our downtown. And what would happen with that is different areas will be activated. And I think we can start to focus on more, the affordable housing and starting to densify with the mixed uses. So I would definitely go with the Green Line, from the south to downtown. I believe, going over the river and I don't know about going under the river. That sounds a little bit a little wild for me, but for the stage one, I believe we can move forward with that. With the second part, possibly going with the BRT for the second segment that can can translate into an LRT down the road. But I would definitely start to push on the Green Line, and let's get it moving. Let's get the jobs going. Let's get our communities connected. Create sustainability, and the more roads we build, we're going to keep more getting cars. We know that. So I would go with LRT, especially it's safe for winter and our climate, and it's sustainable. And so,
right. There is always a question of how much you can afford on the capital side. So let me put a few more projects on the table because they may not all be able to go ahead all at once, even though there's a will to see them all approved. So I want to know if you were to have to make a decision to prioritize these 4 projects, which one would you put at the top of the priority list? So the event center with the Calgary Flames, the BMO Center expansion for the convention space, the Arts Commons transformation, and the Foothills Fieldhouse. What would be your priority if you'd been on council to vote on those?
So I would definitely go with the event center. And the reason why I would do that was because it's such a good business case. And the Calgary that I know, that I was raised in, it's fun, it's exciting, and it's vibrant. And that's what's going to attract people to Calgary. And it's going to really stimulate and invigorate our downtown, and it helps with the concerts and the shows and the festivals and the Calgary Flames. So it'll really create that excitement back in Calgary, and we can start to attract more talent. And come on, like, this is Calgary. We are a hockey. We're a hockey city. And so I would say that's my first one, and that would actually, it would actually finance the next projects.
Okay.
That bring enough income.
All right, let's talk about housing. So when you say affordable housing, what do you mean by that?
So affordable housing, they base it on if you have less than 60,000 income and you spend more than 30% of your income on housing, then you need affordable housing. And so Calgary is actually really unique that we have a major shortage of affordable housing. So we have 15,000 units short of affordable housing, and that's a big number, and it would take probably about a decade or so to catch up to the affordable housing. If we look at where Calgary is. And to me, it's just so clear that we are, the most livable city in North America, and we have a shortage in affordable housing. Like, we need to address this, and it needs to be, we need to catch up to the number of other major cities. And I think what would happen is we would continue to create jobs and create the, for long term. And we have a population that are houseless. And so if we can catch up to the affordable housing, close that gap, then these people can potentially be off the street and not be, lured by, the back alleys and things that people do when they're houseless. So, having a little bit of dignity. And what would happen if we caught up on the number of affordable housing? It'll actually drive down the pricing of the affordable, because we would actually supply the demand. And so that's where I think Calgary really needs to capitalize on closing that affordable housing gap.
All right. Let's talk a bit about how that we've seen a bit of tension in the development community about how you go about developing. Do you densify and build up in the existing inner city communities, or do you build out and build greenfield development knowing you can have higher density and perhaps lower costs? And that's another aspect of the affordability issue. How do you see that issue? How would you balance it?
Yeah, good question, Danielle. So I would say it's appropriate to go 50% urban and 50% suburbs. And And the reason why is because we are growing. More people do choose to live in Calgary. I believe the federal government is still planning to bring in 1.2 million immigrants into Canada. And so, with Calgary being one of the choices people want to live to, move into and choose to live, it would be appropriate to do the urban. And the thing is that a lot of our communities, they have so much to offer, like Inglewood and Ramsey and Kensington, all these different, they have a little bit of character, and people want to live there, and it's just offering them these diverse housing options. Now, I understand that, with the suburbs, there's more strain, and people talk about the urban sprawl, and people want to live out, they want to live in the suburbs. But what I would propose is, I think that, we can up the building codes a little bit, making it a little bit more safer. So for example, if you're building to the code, you're just meeting the minimum requirement. And so what I say is, you can meet the code and go beyond it. And so if you're building in the suburbs, let's build safer homes. Let's build homes that are sustainable, that are for, the cities of the future. And so, for example, safer home may include sprinklered. And so what would actually take the less strain on the fire department, because that's what they say is that would be. So I think it doesn't hurt at all. And people at the end of the day would get that little more sense of safety. And I think we will need to move forward towards that in the future.
All right. Have you heard any controversy about the guidebook for great communities? Because there was some concern that as you're building out that mixed use neighborhood, people are concerned that it changes the character of the neighborhood. Do you think that can be balanced, or what kind of feedback did you get on it?
So the guidebook, I find that what I've heard is people said it's kind of sideswiped them a little bit. They didn't really, it just kind of popped up, and they're like, okay, well, what is this? And so people don't understand. And so I think it really comes back to the engagement, allowing people to understand what they want to do with the guidebook. With the mixed use it is appropriate, and it does create complete communities, where you can get your retail, your coffee shops, your laundry, and then you can live above, or your restaurants or your gym. So it is, good use and good practical planning. So I think that, mixed use developments, especially in transit oriented areas, would be, smart planning for, as growth.
Okay. Let me talk to you about some of the other issues that have come up in the last year or so, just to get your feedback on it. When we're talking about the role of the private sector in delivering public services, there's been a conversation when you're talking about garbage collection or operating golf courses or snow removal. I'm interested in knowing what role do you think the private sector should play in delivering public services?
Yeah, so I think, specifically for Ward 10, I would definitely go with private. I think that there's a lot of talent there, a lot of hardworking people, a lot of hardworking immigrants, and they've worked for the city, and they have the competency to provide these services, and especially if it's good business case for the city, and it would actually save the city some money. I believe a lot of contractors in Ward 10 would take that on, and they would take on the garbage collection, they would take the snow plowing, because they have the experience, and they would be totally willing to provide that service and really contribute to the communities. And they want to work. They're very fortunate to be here. A lot of them come from third world countries, and they just want to be a part of the community. They want to contribute and have a good life.
Okay, let me ask you about, you'd mentioned earlier about policing, and there's sort of another side to that, because we've seen the defund the police movement in the last year. And I wonder what that movement means to you and what we should take from it.
Yeah, so defunding the police, I would back the police. I don't think we should defund the police, especially in Ward 10. People want to be safe. They want to be secure. I mean, who are you going to call when you need help? Like, you're going to call the police, right? But I would be supportive of reallocating some of the funds, especially now with, this crisis that we're coming out of, dealing with a lot of the mental health, allocating resources towards dealing with people's well-being, and what that does is it'll deal with the short term, and the immediate, and also the long term. So allocating different resources towards mental health, and a lot of the community associations and stuff.
Okay, let me ask you about another sort of aspect of policing, which is traffic enforcement. So the city voted to, or council voted to reduce speed limits in the residential areas to 40 kilometers per hour. Did you support that?
So, I understand what they want to do with it. From 50 to 40, people who, if you were to get hit, you have a higher chance of survival. So they want to make it safe. And so from what I've heard at Ward 10 is people, they feel like, okay, well, it's kind of a waste of money, like you're going to change these signs. But really what I think they just didn't get engaged enough, because a lot of the people actually say a lot of the streets are being used as drag races. And so, lowering the speed limit would actually, have people, it would deter them from speeding, and it would also make our streets safer, especially with, the e-scooters that we got going on, and a lot of more active lifestyles. So I would, bike lanes and all these things. So, the 40, I would say, I have young people around me. I think it is safer, and it's only at the cost of 60 to 80 seconds more on someone's, daily commute. So it's not a big impact, but I think people they didn't get engaged, and that's why they feel that they were blindsided.
All right. What about the public art program? Speaking of public engagement, there were a couple of controversies, the Big Blue Ring and the Beaufort Towers, among others. What do you think they've done enough to restore public confidence in that program, or do you think that they need to take another look at it?
Yeah. So the public art is, I believe in art. I think it's great. It inspires people and creates communities and a community connection. As for the public art, I think that we could focus more on affordable housing and housing people. I think with art, we can also use those resources for the community associations. And I'll give you an example. This weekend I was volunteering in Mayland Heights Association, and so what they did is they had an initiative to paint the bridge on 8th Avenue. And so if you look at it, it used to be just a concrete bridge, and it was a little bit rusty. And now that they've painted it, it's actually become a really talking point and vibrant. And so, and it wasn't that expensive. The association, they got the grant and they got it done. So I think that would be a good community-led art initiative. So.
Okay, I have to go and see it now. So what does it look like? Is it a vibrant color, or is it more like it's a graffiti type of art? Why is it so unique now?
It's like this rainbow, and it's so many different colors, and then there's different designs and stencils. There's like butterflies and bicycles, and it just makes the bridge alive all of a sudden. And if I could share with you, I was there this weekend volunteering, and I went up to this gentleman, and he was there, and I said, have we met before? And he said, no, we haven't, but I've seen your signs. And so tell me about yourself. And so I've talked to him for about 15 minutes. And then he told me he was in education. And it turns out he was my principal when I was in high school. And I'm like, oh my God, this is my principal talking to me, Mr. Marmalek from Bishop McNally. And so it was just so cool that we're doing this paint event, this community building, and I ran into my principal. So
that's a good story.
Yeah.
Let me just finish with a couple of questions for you about the role of an elected council member, because you've got a few hats that you have to wear. So in the first case, when you're elected as an independent. So to get anything passed through, you've got to get 8 votes. So tell me how you would approach that, because the relationship on council has, from the outside, appeared to be a bit fractious. What would you do differently?
Yeah, so I would consider myself a team player, and I would collaborate with people, and really understand what they want to do. I think there's been some things have gotten a little out of control here. The relationships aren't that great. But I think that most people would say I'm, really easygoing, easy to work with. And I would really be representing the constituents of what they want. So I think that, collaborating and just keeping in mind that we're doing things for the betterment, of Calgary and the people that live there.
Okay, another question for you, because we're going to have a fall referendum on a couple of questions: equalization and daylight savings being provincial, but also fluoride being local. And there's also been a plebiscite before on the Olympics. What kind of issues do you think should be put to the public, or do you think that you would rather make those decisions yourself as an elected council member?
Yeah. Okay. So fluoride, obviously people are pretty passionate about that, and it keeps coming up. So put it to a plebiscite, a referendum, and let the people choose, and then let's we'll move forward from there. And so what else? There was the
Well, just I'm thinking sort of generally, philosophically. Do you want to make the decisions yourself, or do you think that the public should have direct votes?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to the relationship with the communities, and talking to the people, and like, okay, do you understand what they want? And if you understand what they want, have you engaged with the community and understanding? If you have a good understanding, then yeah, make that decision. But you just making sure that you are representing the people in the community.
All right, and that leads into the last question, because sometimes you'll end up having to make a choice between supporting something that the administration is recommending because they think it's best for the city as a whole, but perhaps your constituents want you to go in a different direction. What would you do there?
So I would, I guess based on my experience, based on, what I know, I would talk to the people and see what they really want. Now, if I knew that it would possibly be better for the community and be better for Calgary, I would talk to them, and that's where the leadership and the communication skills would come into place. And at the end of the day, if they don't like it still, it's the people's choice. So I would go with the people.
All right. Well, let people know how they can get in touch with you and how they can follow your campaign. What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so the best way is we have our website. You can go to tonydin.ca, or you can go to our Facebook, or Instagram. I'm really active on all the platforms, and Twitter. And so each platform has a little bit different media, but we do try to keep it consistent. But yeah, they can reach me on websites and social media.
All right. Thanks for the conversation today.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I enjoyed the conversation.
I appreciate that. That was your candidate for Ward 10, Tony Dinh.